Happy Wednesday, folks, and welcome to Ask Evelyn Live, where we answer your questions about garbage, recycling, compost, and other trashy topics. I'm your host, Becca Fong, and this week we have a very special episode for you about home composting with special guest Reingard Rieger from Tilth Alliance. We are so glad that we have a really good question for you guys this week all about the home composting. So it's something that you could really close the loop even closer when you're at home, as long as you're willing. And so we're really excited to have both Pat and Reingard join us, and we are going to get into it just in a moment. So quick reminder, of course, at the top of the show is that this show is powered by your questions. So make sure that you have them, send them to us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can always send them to us at askevelyn@seattle.gov. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Becca, how you doing?
Pretty good. I'm just, snuggling with my home compost bin here.
Nice. That's always good. Good to do. Got my guide, my where does it go guide, ready on the ready in case we need it.
Totally. So we've got
special guest.
We've got a special guest coming on, so she's going to join us in just a moment here. So, of course, at the top of the show, we always have folks introduce yourself as well.
So I'm Pat Kaufman. I'm the Commercial Recycling and Composting Program Coordinator for the City of Seattle, the Solid Waste Utility. It is a Seattle Public Utilities role that I play to work with businesses to help them compost and recycle. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am super excited. We've got a really good question. And since this is Compost Month, we've got another great one. All right, Reingard, welcome.
Hey, Reingard.
Thank you so much. Hi.
Awesome. So, Reingard, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, happy to. My name is Reingard Rieger, and I'm managing the Master Composter Sustainability Program for Tilth Alliance. So I talk about compost all day long, almost every day.
Fantastic. We are so excited that you could join us this week. Thank you so much for making it happen.
Thank you.
We have a really great question this week. And so, Pat, will you kick us off with our listener question?
Yes, I will. I have the listener question ready to go here. Of course, I'm all ready. I'm always ready with the question because I have the question ready. And it's here, and I have it. Hi, Evelyn. After a 10-minute trip to empty my kitchen compost into the compost cart at my building, I was wondering if it would be possible to compost my food scraps at home. Since I live in an apartment, space is at a premium, and it can't smell. Are there any options for me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Angela.
All right.
So what's the quick answer for Angelo? Yes.
All right,
Yes.
Reingard, what do you got for Angelo? Is there some possibility where he can compost in his apartment in a small space that's not going to be stinky?
Yeah, there actually are options. And one thing that comes to mind is what you could do is put a warm bin in. We don't always think of that, but warm bins are really convenient in small scale fashion, which more and more of us are in apartments, so we can't put like a huge compost pile in there. But a warm bin is contained because we put it in a bucket or something, and we can manage them so that they don't smell at all. So I think a warm bin would be a great option for Angela.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, and since we have you on, and Pat is definitely an accomplished composter, a master composter from years ago, let's get into the details. All right. So, Reingard, can you break down just a little bit, a little bit of how decomposition works and how a warm bin actually happens, or any composting system?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it already, breaking down, right? So what happens with anything that's a natural material, right? Whether it's food or leaves or branches or even paper, because that's derived, of course, from natural materials. It breaks down over time, and that is done by tiny little creatures, bacteria, fungi, and then slugs involved oftentimes in the process, and snails, and then of course worms. All kinds of different worms. There are like 9,000 different types, but there's one kind that we use for worm bins. Yes. And the ones we use for worm bins are called red wigglers.
Okay.
So that's what you want to look for if you're really interested in that. So when you're breaking down, when material is breaking down, you will have, first it's chewed down and then it's broken down even more. And so you want to make sure if you do this for your own purpose, like making compost, whether it's outdoors or in your home, you want to make sure that you feed them in a way that works really well. So
okay, that makes a lot of sense.
What they are looking for.
So one thing I think about is like, it's probably going to be step by step. Angela's kind of a beginner. So, I know, Pat, you've done some worm bins too. And Reingard, maybe you guys can talk about like what let's help them visualize like what a worm is going to look like.
Right.
Oh, the worm itself?
The worm bin.
Sorry.
The worm bin.
Go ahead.
So here are 2 examples. I'm going to try to see if you can see this. Here are 2 examples of like how worm bins are looking. And that's just like, there's lots of different ways to do this. And there's also some that you can buy. So on the right side here, this is one that we actually have like the description for building yourself if you're up for that. Okay. And then on the left side here, I don't know if it shows really well, but this is a stacked system. They're commonly sold commercially. Mm-hmm. And then basically what all these systems are like is like you have an outer bucket of sorts, mm-hmm. and you have an inner one where you're gonna make sure that you have holes on the bottom, and then you have a lid. You also want to make holes. Okay, see that probably better this side. And so what that does is you allow for airflow. Yep. And like all creatures, those tiny bugs I was just talking about, they need to breathe, and they also need to have moisture. So we're gonna talk about that soon too. And so you want to put that inner one with the holes and in the outer one. And then you put that lid on. So you can keep it all contained. You keep the lid on. But you want to have little air holes on there. So that's all the systems in some form or another have this concept behind it.
Totally. And Pat, you and I both love a DIY solution. We love seeing your yogurt containers. What are some other options maybe, Pat, that he could use besides yogurt containers or totes or kind of whatever?
Yeah, I think that's great. Reingard, like that's a small and simple, right? I have a similar sample here. This is a joint compound, a building product. But it's just a plastic bucket. It's not yogurt, it looks the same. But so, whatever you have in your garage or whatever you can salvage from behind a restaurant or whatever, a couple of 5-gallon buckets. But you have to have a lid that it's not like it has to be a snap-on steel lid, but it has to at least stay on top and then have the holes in it. So, or you can just go to Fred Meyer. If it'd be great to reuse something. As Becca says, we love a reuse option.
We love it.
But if you want to purchase one of the products like Reingard showed us the picture of, there's a dozen different products. They're fantastic online, and some are made for in-home use. Some are made for more out on the deck or on the lanai or out in your backyard. But there's definitely going to be options, and all the product descriptions online will tell you what the best application is. And another tip on that, on purchasing such a product, I would take time to read all the comments and the ratings of the product, because that's when you're going to find the ones that are going to work best for your home, for your application.
Totally.
That's so true.
Absolutely. So Reingard, I think that helps with the smell, because that was something that Angela was concerned about. What I'm picturing is like a cupboard under a sink in an apartment. I might be wrong, Angela, correct me. But so let's think about, we talked a little bit about how to put the worm in together, and I'm going to put links to all of these resources in the show notes. So you guys are going to be able to access some really great plans that Tilth Alliance has about how to build all kinds of worm bins from big to small. And then also some really great resources to troubleshoot and take you through these steps. You don't have to remember everything here, but, so we talked a little bit about putting together, and Reingard, you started talking about, you have 2 things. You have kind of greens and browns you hear about a lot when you're putting together any kind of compost system. So can you tell us about that specifically for a worm bin?
Yeah. So for worm bin, it's a little different from how you would do it in an outdoors, your backyard compost pile. You want to have a little bit more of what we usually call bedding, because we're talking about, like animals. So what you want to start with is like, newspapers, cups, for example, or shredded paper, or if you have like straw or something like that, let's say you have animals that use, straw bedding as well. You can then put that in the worm bin, and, use it a second time as bedding for your worms. And you want to do a little bit more of that than you would usually in an outdoors bin. Okay. Or a compost bin. The worms, you want to like really think of it as bedding. So maybe 80-90% of your content, volume wise, would be that. And you want to make it a little moist, just a tiny little bit, not so that it's like wet.
Right.
Because once you start putting your food stuff in, a lot of food has a lot of water. I mean, a cucumber is almost only water, right? So you want to make sure that you make it just comfortably moist, kind of like a kitchen sponge that's been like sitting out there for a couple of days and still feels moist, but there's no way you can get any water squeezed out. That would be just perfect.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
And
Yeah, I actually enjoyed from the old days of doing more worm bins, because Seattle Public Utilities, we used to really promote the at-home worm bin before curbside collection of food waste was an option, because it used to just be yard waste in the yard waste bin. So we used to promote this all the time. We were doing demonstrations and stuff. And if you take a newspaper, just your typical newspaper on the folded side and tear it down ways, you get these wonderful long strips, only about as thick as your finger or as wide as your finger thereabouts. And you can take a whole Sunday paper and fill, a portion of your worm bin with that. But that is always, seems like that's always available to folks, a newsprint, newspaper. And that's perfectly fine for bedding. It's nice to throw a few natural elements in, like some leaves or some straw or, some stuff from the garden, just little handfuls of this and that, just to kind of give it a little bit more of the organism introduction, which is kind of nice. But the red wigglers, let's talk about the worms a little bit.
Look, I bought another photo. So
I want to see
this is a handful of worms for you. And that's a perfect amount to start at, like a bin that's the size that I showed you. So if you do the little yoga bin, container, you want even less than that. And there's lots of resources. If you're looking for resources, you can actually connect with the garden hotline. That's a free service, and they actually point you to resources, places where you can buy them. Nurseries around here have them. Some of the hardware stores even do. So there's definitely places you can find them in Seattle.
You can get them in mail order. You can order them online. They come in a little box that are like, a little net bag inside, so they breathe and transport. But it's, red wigglers. It's hard to say red
because
wigglers.
The wiggle.
Yep, totally. All right, so Reingard, two other all-important questions. How much do you feed them? And because everything at my household has got to put in on this effort to make this household work, how long is it going to take for Angelo to get some compost back out of his bin?
Right. So how much you feed them? A worm eats about half of the body weight in a day. So that it really depends on how many worms you have in there. And that's why I'm telling you that, because I can't say you put this much in. It really depends on how many worms you have. So so that's a good guideline. Start small because you're starting them up, and then you can add more and more as it grows.
Okay, and there's certain things we shouldn't feed them, right?
Right. There's definitely things that you don't want to feed them. If you think of them as, they really like vegetables. Veggie scraps are perfect, but also coffee grounds are awesome. So if you're a coffee person, or if you go to a coffee shop and you consume something else, coffee grounds are great. They love it. And so a couple things you don't want to put in, like meat food, like meats, your greasy pizza leftovers, eggs and dairy. Those are really the main things, and that's mostly because they just don't break down fast enough, and then you do have the smell issue you don't want.
Right, that's a key thing I think is the smell. Those meat and cheese and dairy product stuff, that's gonna smell even before the worms can get to consuming it. It's gonna start to rot basically. Because this is a non-refrigerated unit here, so you want to stay in your fruits and vegetables kind of category as much as possible, I think.
Yeah, you're totally right, Pat. Yeah.
Okay, so how soon can you expect compost from your bin?
They start feeding immediately, right? So you probably can, I would check after a month and see.
Okay.
You will see all these tiny little pieces that look like they've been chewed.
Okay.
Essentially, I don't know if I can say this on the show, but like what you're harvesting is worm poop.
Yeah.
So you have these teeny little things that look like teeny little poop, and it depends on how big your bin is and how what you fed them and all that. But I would check after a month, and then you can start feeding them, and then they will probably you get more of that, and we call that worm castings.
Okay.
So that's something that you can look for. If you have a larger bin, it can be a couple months.
Okay.
Until they've really gone through, and they will not only eat your food waste, they will also, or food scraps, they will also eat the bedding. So it's you'll see it sink down, and that's an indication that they're ready. You know, you're ready to kind of check and see if you can harvest your.
Cool.
So yes.
I mean, I love worm bins. It's such a dynamic system. It's super fun, and it can be something really small. I've definitely done them in tiny little things with kids in pop bottles. I mean, even smaller, because there are little scraps of food in there. So I hope that you guys all will give this a try. To recap really quickly, and again, all of the links and resources will be in the show notes, so check those out. But if you've got a small space and you are tired of maybe walking all the way to your trash room, or you just want to try something new, a worm bin is a really good option. So you can do it with DIY stuff, which I know all of us on the show are big fans on. But if you want to get a bigger system from a store, do you? Absolutely. You can get those worms often at same places that are selling those bins for you. And you want to make sure that you feed them. They're vegetarians, so they're actually vegans. So you want to make sure that you're feeding them veggie scraps, no meat, no dairy, no eggs, because that stuff's just going to get funky. And then nobody wants to smell that in your house. Right. So, but that's why you have a compost cart. You could just run that stuff down and you won't have to take it out quite as often. And when you're done, you get to harvest the worm castings or worm poop, because that stuff is amazing, amazing nutrients for your soil. So awesome. So Angela and all of you watching, I hope you guys got some good tips. And one really quick plug is the city of Seattle is recruiting for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. So we've got a captive audience with all you waste nerds out there. If any of you guys want to get involved and really have a say in helping us craft what kind of solid waste system looks like in this city, go and look at our show notes. We will have a link. You can also, if you guys are already on social following us, you've probably seen announcements for that. But think about it, folks. We would love to have your waste nerd knowledge helping us.
As a former SWAC member, I will submit that it is a good time. It's like-minded people gather and talk about recycling and composting and solid waste. So SWAC is fun. Go for it.
I mean, come on. You know, how could that not be fun, right? You get to sit around, you get to talk trash, you get to think about the future. Check it out. I would definitely consider it. We would love to have you. All right. So Reingard, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that you would like to plug?
Yeah, I think, I mentioned the garden hotline earlier. Maybe I should, say that again. Gardenhotline.org is a free service for any gardening questions, really. But also, if you have questions about worm bins or worms, or you're looking for resources, places to buy them, send them a note. You can find them through the website, or you can call them at 206-633-0224. So, yes, definitely. They are happy to get back to you. And again, it's free. So it's free advice. What's not to like about that? So
fantastic. Absolutely. And I do want to give a quick plug for you. Introduce yourself. You run the Master Composter Sustainability Steward Program, formerly Master Composters like Pat. It's a volunteer program that you can join up with once a year. So maybe look at it for 2022 if y'all are interested in spreading the word on composting and sustainability actions like recycling and composting and, other trashy topics. So with that, guys, this has been an awesome show. Reingard, thank you so much for joining us. This is fantastic to have you on here. Great way to close out Compost Month for us. And we hope that all of you guys have enjoyed this episode, and we will see you again next week, Wednesday at 1:30. And make sure you send us your questions, because that's what keeps this show going. And that's why we show up every week and get to talk to you. So with that, I'm Becca Fong, and remember, life's simpler with less stuff.
I'm Pat Kaufman. Remember to recycle right. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.